White has a rook in h1, the white king is in f2, black has a king in d2 and two pawns, one in d3 and one in e2, trying to promote. Now here white can win this game, but the moves have to be very accurate. Now how do we win this game? The goal is to get the king to e3 and control d2 in order to have complete control over the two pawns and then win through the opposition. So the first move will be a tempo move. So rook to g1. So this will be the first move. Now the king is forced to move. He is forced to go to either c2, c2 or c3. So let's just say he goes to c3, king to e3, and we're attacking d2. Now king goes to c2. This is the only move that makes sense for the black player. In fact, if he pushes the pawn to d2, then white can just capture the pawn with the king, and then the king and the rook will guard d1. And well, the e pawn definitely cannot be pushed. So the other move for the black king to stop the king from reaching d2 is king to c2. So now we have to play, this is very simple, rook to h1, right? Just another tempo move. And now the king is forced to go to c3 again. And now the winning move is rook to c1 check, forcing the king away from the square d2, allowing our king to land safely and win the game easy. In this example, white has a king in b1 and the rook in c1, and black has a king in b4, the two pawns in b3 and c3. Now here, the key move for the white player is rook to h1. Now, there's lots of options that black can choose to go for. Let's look at first king to a3 in case he wants to play active. Now this one loses quickly. The best move is rook to h4 now. Right, so black cannot move his king up because of the rook, and he can only push his pawns. So for instance, let's try pawn to c2. That loses quickly. King c1, and now the only move that makes sense for the black player is definitely not rook to a2 because of rook a4 checkmate, and b2 doesn't really go anywhere because of king takes pawn, and now the pawn cannot be pushed and to promote because the king will take it, and then king a2 doesn't help because of rook a4 checkmate again. Now looking at another situation, let's say instead of king a3, king chooses to go a4, which doesn't really make much sense after rook h4, so same move basically, and then king a3. Now we just have to play a tempo move. So for instance, rook to g4, just so that it's black to move again, and we're in the same situation. It's not really the same because we have a rook in g4 rather than in h4, but that's the same pattern. Now black is forced to push one of the pawns, and the situation will be the same as it was before. Two more options could be like pushing the pawns, b2 or c2. They were both bad. After pawn to b2, then king c2, attacking c3, white rook guards b1, forcing the king to play c4 in order not to lose the pawn. But now if white just plays rook to h3, the king is guarding b1, so the pawn cannot promote. The idea now with the rook is to capture this pawn and then eventually capture the other pawn and then win the game. If black plays king to b4, now we cannot capture the pawn because otherwise pawn to b1 promotes, and then the king is forced to take the pawn, and then the opponent's king will take our rook. So now all we need to do is just the usual tempo move, so rook to g3, and now if king moves anywhere, the white rook is able to capture the pawn, and if the king goes to then c4, then rook can capture the pawn with check, and then eventually capture the other pawn. The other option is pawn to c2, which really doesn't make a difference. After king to b2, now the opponent's king is forced to stay either in a4 or c4 in order not to lose the b3 pawn. So let's say he goes to c4. Now we need to play rook to h3. The idea is to take this pawn while the king guards this square, but we have to be careful and do it properly. Now the king is forced to play b4 because king d4 loses both pawns, and so king b4 to keep protecting the b3 pawn, we're able to give a check, and then let's say king c4, rook c3 check, winning the pawn. Just the same thing if king a3, rook to c3 wins the pawn. So let's look at king c4 now. Now, what happens if king plays to c4 instead of a3? So king to c4. Now rook goes to h8. King to d4. Rook to b8. The idea is to attack the pawn, and now the pawn in b3, and now king. This is what black tries to play, king to d3. This is the best move that black can play because b2 loses. It loses to the usual move, king to c2, attacking, preventing the opponent's king from getting closer, forcing the opponent's king to stay and protect the pawn while the rook comes down, and eventually do the same thing that we've been doing so far, the usual pattern. So that's why black has to play king to d3. Now the best move for the white player is king to c1. Right, so it's important not to be tempted by taking the pawn in b3, because now king d2 leads to a draw. White will be forced to sacrifice the rook for the pawn, because otherwise the black pawn is coming down with check. The king cannot reach c1 because the square c1 is protected by the black king. The king is forced to go a2 or b2 with promotion into queen. So how to continue now? King to c1. Now black's only move that makes sense is king c4. If black tries to play pawn to b2, for example, here comes king b1, wins for white, because after, let's say, black has either king d2 or pawn to c2, let's say pawn to c2, then we can capture the pawn, then king to d2 gets checked, and the king is forced away from the d file. The white king can capture the pawn. If king goes to d2, then just check, rook to d8, check, forcing the king away from the d file. Let's say king goes to e2, for example, then king c2, and now we just go on with the usual way. So let's say king c3, then rook comes down with check, and then captures the pawn. Or if, let's say, king to c1, then rook d3, king e1 and rook d3, that's the same thing. So going back, king to c4. So what's the best move now in this situation to remember? It's rook to b7. Why? Because it's a tempo move that forces black to move again, but this time king d3 doesn't really help because of rook takes pawn, this time without problem, since our king is facing the opponent's pawn and there's no check involved, and black cannot possibly promote his pawn, which now leaves black the only possibility to play pawn b2 check, and after king c2, king d4, we just continue the same way. Rook c7, looking for capturing the pawn, and then the other pawn, just like we did before.